Hey everyone, welcome back. You ready to dive into some seriously wild history with us today? Because we're talking about the 2025 U.S. Canada trade war.
Ooh, that one still feels so weird to even say out loud, right? Like U.S. Canada trade war. What
Yeah, talk about a plot twist nobody saw coming. Seriously, though, it's like those two are practically the definition of friendly neighbors always working together, and then
Right.
bam, tariffs flying left and right.
It really makes you realize how much we take those stable relationships for granted.
Hmm.
International relations, they can change on a dime.
So true, and that's exactly why we wanted to do this deep dive. We want to unpack not just what happened, but why it matters, like in the grand scheme of things. You with me?
Absolutely. I'm all about understanding the domino effects, those historical turning points that shape the world we live in today.
Okay, so to really get into the nitty-gritty, we're going to zero in on this pivotal moment, a speech by then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. It's basically where he kind of lays down the law to then President Trump.
Oh, yeah, that speech was electric. You could practically feel the tension through the screen.
Yeah.
But we've got reactions from CNN commentators, too. Even former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark weighs in.
Yeah, a real heavyweight lineup. All right, so picture this March 2025, the U.S. has just dropped these tariffs on a whole bunch of Canadian goods.
And this is huge because historically, the U.S. and Canada have had this incredibly intertwined economic relationship. Right? It's like two best friends who also happen to be amazing business partners.
Okay, that's a perfect analogy. So what happens when those business partners suddenly decide to play hardball?
Well, that's where the whole concept of interdependence gets real.
Mm.
Both economies rely on each other for tons of goods and services.
Yeah.
So when one side throws up a trade barrier like tariffs, it's like a chain reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Impacts businesses, consumers, even national security on both sides.
Makes sense. But Canada doesn't just sit there and take it, right?
Nope. They fire back with their own set of tariffs, aka counter tariffs.
Yeah.
Basically their way of saying, oh, it's on now.
Tit for tat, except with two countries that usually settle things over a friendly hockey game, not economic warfare.
Exactly. And that's where Trudeau's speech comes in. It's not just a response, it's like this defining moment that captures the shock and frustration so many Canadians were feeling.
Because remember, before this whole trade war thing, Canada was all about multilateralism, working cooperatively with other countries to tackle global issues.
Right, so this whole America First approach that was gaining traction in the U.S. at the time, it was a total 180.
A real slap in the face for a staunch ally like Canada. You can practically hear the betrayal in Trudeau's voice when he says, the United States has initiated a trade war against its closest friend and ally, Canada.
And he doesn't shy away from calling Trump out by his first name, Donald.
Yeah.
Super unusual in these kinds of formal addresses.
Definitely a power move there, like he's trying to connect directly with the American people over the heads of the administration.
Exactly. It's like he's saying, look, this hurts us both.
Yeah.
This makes zero sense.
And then he takes it a step further, pointing out how absurd it is that the U.S. is picking a fight with Canada while trying to appease someone like Vladimir Putin.
Oof, that's a big one. That really highlights the concern that by alienating its allies, the U.S. was weakening its position globally and maybe even empowering adversaries like Russia.
Like shooting yourself in the foot while handing your rival a bigger gun.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then Trudeau doubles down on the whole standing up for Canada thing.
Oh, yeah. He makes it crystal clear that Canada won't be bullied, especially when its economic well-being is on the line. He says, we will not back down from a fight when it is a fight for our workers and our communities and our future.
There's this real defiance in his tone, right? It's like he's channeling the spirit of every Canadian who felt wronged by this whole situation.
Totally. And it's not just about abstract economic principles either. This trade war had a real human cost. Industries that relied on cross-border trade, lumber, steel, agriculture, they were all hit hard.
Job loss is uncertainty for families across Canada. It's like this ripple effect that goes way beyond the balance sheets.
And Trudeau acknowledges that head on. He speaks directly to the negative impact on both American and Canadian consumers and workers, hammering home that this is a lose-lose situation.
But then he pivots to the fentanyl issue,
Right.
which the USA claimed was partly why they imposed the tariffs. They said Canada wasn't doing enough to stop the flow of fentanyl across the border, but Trudeau shuts that down hard.
He's like, hold up. Let me be clear. Canada is doing more than ever to fight the opioid crisis. He even throws down a statistic, a 97% drop in fentanyl seizures between January and December.
Boom, mic drop. He's using hard data to dismantle their argument. Like, check the facts, folks. What's the real reason for these tariffs?
And he even suggests that the whole fentanyl thing is just a pretext, a smokescreen for other motives.
Which, of course, leaves everyone wondering, okay, so what's the real story here?
It's like there's this whole other layer of intrigue waiting to be peeled back.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. It's not just about a trade war. It's about understanding the power dynamics, the political calculations, the potential consequences that go way beyond economics.
Totally. We're talking about a potential unraveling of decades of cooperation between two of the world's closest allies.
All right, so we've got Trudeau delivering this fiery speech defending Canada's position and basically calling out the U.S. for what he sees as a betrayal of their long-standing friendship. But how did the rest of the world react?
Well, CNN commentators at the time didn't hold back. They called it an unprecedented low point in U.S. Canada relations.
Unprecedented low point. That's not just a little disagreement, that's a full-on rupture in a relationship that's been defined by cooperation and mutual respect for decades.
Right. And they weren't just talking about political posturing either. They highlighted the very real and personal impact of this trade war on people's lives.
Like the emotional fallout, the sense of betrayal and hurt that Canadians were feeling. And you can understand why, right? It's like having a close friend suddenly turn on you and the emotional sting can be just as bad as the economic hit.
Absolutely. It really underscores the human cost of these geopolitical